Democratic State Senator and now candidate for Texas Attorney General Nathan Johnson of Dallas. Thank you so much and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
Thank you, Jack. Good to be here. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to be with you. So why are you running for Texas Attorney General and what is the essence of your campaign?
The framers of the Texas Constitution had something very specific in mind when they created the office of Attorney General, and that mission is not being fulfilled. Those framers mistrusted power in all forms everywhere. They wanted the Attorney General to be part of the executive branch, independently elected by the voters, to act as a check to the concentration of power and the abuse of power wherever it is, in government, in the marketplace, and on the streets. And for quite a long time now, the office has not been used for that at all. It has been used as a political tool, and the interests of the public and of the state have been trampled upon in service of a political machine that isn't particularly concerned with either. A political machine that sees people as a way to extract wealth and somebody over whom to exercise power. That's not who should be in the Attorney General's office. There need to be a check on the governor, on the legislature, on corruption, on corporations, on the President of the United States. The Attorney General has got to stand for upholding the rule of law so that this state can thrive. We haven't had it. It's time to fix it.
And so how would you change that? And so if you are the Attorney General, what would your office look like then?
It would look like a bunch of really good lawyers and a bunch of really good non-lawyers who are concerned with the policies and the governance of this state and making sure that we have guardians of competition in the marketplace. We are those who stand in the way of corruption in the political sphere, and we protect people on the streets. So what it might look like is if Donald Trump decides that he wants to take the Texas National Guard to Oregon, the governor doesn't say okay and send them there because the president is acting outside the bounds of his executive authority. The Attorney General should have sued to stop that, sued the governor and sued Donald Trump. The Attorney General should not be colluding with the Trump administration and a judge to take away 24 years of state policy to provide in-state tuition. 24 years of state policy to provide in-state tuition. Instead, what we do is make sure that out there in the marketplace, every corporation understands what the rules are and plays by them so that we have an environment that fosters competition, that creates low prices, innovation, choice. That in government, we do not have a bunch of hollow, grandstanding, headline-grabbing lawsuits out of the Attorney General's office, leaving political corruption and abuses of power to go unchecked. It's a pretty simple job. Uphold the rule of law, protect people, protect markets, ensure that there's no corruption. We just haven't seen that. And let me add, I think it would be unfair and inaccurate to say that the Office of Attorney General, even under Ken Paxton, has completely abdicated all responsibilities. There's some things that the Paxton office did well. They went after big tech because big tech is gravitating towards monopoly. Those are policies that I would continue. But elsewhere, we just have headline-grabbing lawsuit to inflame the passions of 3% of the voters to try to keep a stranglehold on power. That's what has to end.
So you said a lot, so let's break it down. I'm curious about your thoughts, and you talked about it, about what we're seeing with the Texas National Guard, the governor sending it. You think it's illegal? Is that what
I think
hearing?
the president's actions are illegal. And I think the governor, who is the commander-in-chief of the Texas State National Guard, has the power to deploy them for state purposes. But simply acquiescing to Trump's ridiculous demands to send Texas reservists, Texans who have families, who have jobs, who have kids, to disturb their lives and send them to Oregon for a stunt by the President of the United States when he's lying to the public about there being an insurrection in Oregon, that's an abuse of his authority. Abbott should have stood up to Trump, and our Attorney General, Ken Paxton, should have sued to stop it.
And so if you were in office right now, that's what you would be doing?
Yes, that is what I would do.
Do you have, and if that is the case, do you have a good argument, if that's your argument?
Oh, well, you mean, would I have an argument against the Trump administration?
Yeah.
Sure, he went outside of his statutory authority to deploy the National Guard, to federalize state National Guard. He's supposed to do so in cases of emergencies, insurrections, invasions. That's not what's happening. We have protests, there have been incidences of violence, but throughout the history of this country, the dramatic step of deploying the National Guard in a state, in a city, has occurred only in the most extreme of circumstances, when we have multiple days of riots. These are not riots. These are protests, which occasionally turn violent, which is condemnable, and I applaud law enforcement for trying to squelch it. But sending the National Guard there, that's a stunt.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, in Chicago they did have a commander who said, don't help ICE officers who are surrounded. What do you say about that?
I'm not familiar with the order or the situation, so I don't feel real comfortable saying what somebody should or shouldn't have done.
Gotcha. Okay. The other thing you said that you would challenge. Go ahead.
If you're asking me, would I do I think that ICE officers should be protected if they're under attack? Of course, they should be.
Okay. Let me ask you about the other thing you brought up, and that was the case. It was a Trump administration sued the state. The Attorney General agreed to it about in-state tuition for people who are undocumented.
The children,
the DACA, right?
DACA kids.
DACA kids. So you would have challenged, you would have filed suit against the Trump administration.
I would have defended the laws of the state of Texas. That policy was passed by a Republican legislature, signed into law by Republican Governor Rick Perry, and upheld despite pressure to take it down for 12 consecutive sessions over 24 years. The Attorney General is supposed to defend the laws of the state of Texas and the people of Texas. These are kids who've gone to Texas high schools and gotten good grades, and they want to go to college and make something better of themselves when they live here. And the Trump administration decided to come in and wipe it out. And the Attorney General, instead of defending the law of the state of Texas, just signed an agreed order, colluded with, I'm struggling to not use pejorative terms for the federal judge who issued that order. It was absolutely abominable.
And you bring up an interesting point, because right now all of the statewide elected officials in Texas have been this way for more than 3 decades. They're all Republicans.
That's right.
And so what you're talking about is a situation, if you're elected, you'll be a Democrat in statewide office.
That's right.
And
good old divided government, Jack. We could use it around here.
So, but let me ask you about that situation. It's been a long time since the state would see that, right? So here you would be challenging Texas Republican leaders, the governor, potentially President Trump, the lieutenant governor, et cetera.
Yeah, you bet I would.
And so how do you think that's going to go down with the public? And, you know, the public going in would have to be thinking about that, right?
Mm-hmm. You know, Democrats, of course, really would like a win in this state, and Democrats have actually led in many policy areas where Republicans have held them back, only to then adopt Democratic positions some years later. So it's not like there is a complete absence of Democratic influence in this state. It's just essentially controlled by Republicans who are too slow to realize that they're right. Now, when you have single party rule anywhere in any state in the nation, whether it's Democrat or Republican, for too long, eventually you run out of good ideas. You've gotten your way on just about everything, and so it becomes a base baiting tactic. And all the criticism you see hurled at longtime Democratic run states or longtime Republican run states, I think comes from an absence of political competition. What I'm hearing from Democrats and Republicans in this state is we need somebody to challenge the runaway power that has been seized by the Republicans in office. They can't help themselves. I think Republicans would be so happy if someone were there to check and balance against the abuses of power and the ridiculous stuntery that's going on in the governor's office and the legislature. Another thing, we've kind of lost control as a legislature of policymaking. The Republican majority is generally sad. They're not free to act as well as they can, to pursue their own ideas. They're all controlled. They're controlled from above, they're controlled from Washington, they're controlled by the governor, they're controlled by the lieutenant governor. If there was a balance and a check in place there, power would be more evenly distributed. And that's something we've always believed in this state and in this country. Everybody in the government should have a voice. And if you have a Democrat in office in the Attorney General's office, it opens it up so that everybody, Republican or Democrat, can meaningfully participate.
You spoke about the National Guard, you spoke about DACA in-state tuition, and what also comes to mind is the state's abortion laws and the state's gun laws. And I'm wondering if, while as Attorney General you are not making the laws as you are now as a state senator, but you have to enforce them. And I'm wondering, how awkward would it be for you if you're sitting there having to defend the state's abortion law, which you disagree with and voted against?
Many times.
And same thing about the gun laws, because obviously Democrats really tried hard to change them and put more controls in there on sales, and that hasn't worked. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, this really captures the imagination of the press. Everyone wants to know, what are you going to do when you have to defend these terrible Republican laws? You know, there is a job of Attorney General, and it is to defend the laws of the state of Texas. And I think it's very important that an Attorney General recognize that the legislature makes the laws, and they have the right to make bad laws. They have the right to make stupid laws. They don't have the right to make unconstitutional laws. Well, I guess they have the right to make them, but they don't have the right to see them enforced. And I would not enforce unconstitutional laws by the legislature.
And so what in your mind is unconstitutional?
Well, you know, it changes by the day with this present Supreme Court. So it's a case-by-case basis that comes along. But you raise the more difficult question, what if it's not unconstitutional? What if it's just a bad law? Again, I have to defend the right of the legislature to make the law, right? I have great discretion in enforcement powers. The Attorney General actually isn't the frontline enforcer on many things, but I do have discretion as to how to use the resources, and there are priorities, and there are lesser priorities, and you can bet that any Attorney General, Republican or Democrat, is going to exercise that discretion to see to it that the people of Texas are well served. In the case of a law that I find so repugnant that I just can't in good conscience defend it, we can get outside counsel. It's something that Paxton, that Abbott, that Cornyn, that our last three attorneys general have all done. There are times when your office just can't do it, but you make sure that the state is represented. I actually think that there are times when the Attorney General, for example, in the case of the in-state tuition law, has failed to uphold the law solely because he didn't like it. And I think it is something that every Attorney General has to face, and I will take it very seriously on a case-by-case basis.
And so, but you're saying that you would be open to hiring outside counsel if it is a law you really don't like?
I go further than really don't like. I mean, there's a bunch of laws I don't like. And again, I'm not the enforcer in chief of every law. The Attorney General serves many functions, but it's generally not running around trying to prosecute cases. That's district attorneys, that's federal attorneys, that's U.S. attorneys. The Attorney General does have prosecutorial authority, but it's very circumscribed, and it's usually dependent on working with local officials or federal officials. So I won't be spending, no Attorney General is going to spend a ton of their time defending a law that they don't like or do like. They're going to be spending their time making sure that antitrust laws are enforced, that corruption is rooted out, and that you are cooperating with federal and local authorities to keep the streets safe. I may have some uncomfortable situations. That's part of the job, Jack. There's no easy job in government, and I will deal with that when I have to.
So before we talk about the general election, we've spent a lot of time talking about that. You've got to win this primary.
I do.
So why should Democrats in Texas vote for you over Joe Jaworski, who's also in the race?
I leave it to everybody to make up their own mind. What I can do is present you with qualifications and qualities that I think are relevant to the election. I think it's important that we have somebody in this office who understands state government. I've served for 8 years. In the course of that time, you can see where my values are, you can see how I operate, and you can trust that I understand where the push points and the pressure points are in government and how to be able to influence that from perhaps another position. As far as confidence in what the next Attorney General will do, again, I've been in office for 8 years. I've demonstrated, first of all, that I stand my ground. There are certain values that make me in the Democratic Party, and I haven't wavered on those. But I've also been able to work with Republicans, and the Attorney General has to work with the legislature very often to craft laws to give the Attorney General the power it needs, he needs, she needs to govern, to be the top law enforcement official of the state. I know how to work with the whole legislature. I've passed well over 100 bills from a position in the Democratic minority without ever abandoning my values. So there is a track record, and I think that's important because you need to know when somebody's going into office what they're going to do when they get there. The other thing is, people expect a level of independence, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. They want somebody who is not afraid to stand up to power. And time again, I have defied, I still work with the lieutenant governor, but I have defied him time and time again. I've defied the governor. I've broken with the Democratic Party. I've broken with the Republican Party where I think it best serves the public. So you need a level of independence in that office. You need someone who sticks to their values, and you need somebody who can cooperate with everybody in government to make sure you are serving the interests of the people best. Having a record of that, I think, is important information for people.
We talked about some of the issues, but I'm wondering, are you coming into this with a set of your own priorities for the job, for the office?
I am. I think that, again, this office has been run as a theater. It's been abused. And one of the priorities I have is to restore people's faith in the office. I want people to feel like they have an ally in the Attorney General's office. So blocking the use of the office as part of the concentration of power and looking more at being that check and balance. And to be a little more specific, let's talk about the marketplace. The state of Texas has a pretty good set of competitive business practice laws against anti-competitive practices, against monopolies, against frauds and scams and deceptive trade practices. And I think those need to be reinvigorated. I don't think it's good for the marketplace for small businesses, entrepreneurs, and innovators to be blocked out by corporations that have been able to pretty much seize the apparatus of government, structure markets to their advantage, and really take advantage of the marketplace, including consumers. I think that kind of thing needs to be reinvigorated.
And give me an example of that. I mean,
Big tech is the best, Jack.
Okay.
Big tech is the best, both in terms of where it is today and where it's going. And this is an area where some lawyers in the Paxton Attorney General's office have done some good work. I think that game needs to be raised. Artificial intelligence, by its nature, as an industry and as a technology, favors monopolies. And we have enough of that going on in this country. So part of the office is going to be in real time keeping up with developments in the marketplace and ensuring that startups and competitors are not squashed and that nobody gets too much power to be able to control something as powerful, as dangerous, as helpful as artificial intelligence. There are other areas, the environment is an area where the Attorney General plays a significant role, both as one who defends the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, provides backup and resources, but also one who in certain instances has independent authority under federal law. Again, the Paxton Office of Attorney General has done some things right in that respect and a lot of things wrong. Neither the Attorney General nor the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality is meant to be a servant to private interests to ensure that they can get away with polluting. They are there to make sure that industries operate within a way that preserves the Texas environment that we're all very proud of and that we all rely upon. And I think that agency actually believes in its mission. I would make sure that they pursue it, and I'd make sure they have the resources to defend their actions against any pushback from the commercial sector when we try to enforce our environmental laws. And you can go on and on and on. Every aspect of our economy is affected by the regulatory regime in place, and the Attorney General makes sure that that's enforced. And then finally, I think that as markets change, as technologies change, there needs to be a relationship between the Attorney General and the legislature and the governor and lieutenant governor to make sure that our laws move in step with the changing marketplace so that we do have the regulatory and enforcement tools that we need to go forward in a way that allows our economy to grow and people to have jobs without wrecking everything in the process.
And I did want to ask you another question just about, because so often what we've seen is a new president comes into office and, depending on who it is, the AG reacts differently.
That's right.
Do you see that as, in 2028, if, there's a Democrat in the White House, and if you are elected next year, do you see a change in how you respond?
That's a really important question, and it highlights what I was saying earlier about independence. When under the Biden administration, there was some activity with the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services that I thought threatened indigent hospital care, indigent health care in Texas. And I went to Washington and I met with CMS to object to what the Biden administration was doing to Texas with their policies. I would sue the Biden administration or any other Democratic administration if what they're doing exceeds the bounds of the law and harms Texans. I would sue the Trump administration a lot, because Trump is pretty much lawless, corrupt, and running roughshod over everything. And I'll just say it, he absolutely is. It's terrifying. And the fact that Paxton has really just been his lackey instead of going after him all the time is a betrayal of the people of Texas, and kind of it's an insult to the powers of the office. It's an insult to the framers who trusted the Attorney General to protect people. Whether it's a Democratic administration or a Republican administration, I absolutely will make sure that the interests of this state are protected, that the sovereign rights of this state are protected, and that the rights of individuals are protected.
Is there anything else that you would like to say that I did not ask you about your campaign, et cetera?
Yeah, I think that the people of Texas, like the people around this country, are very alarmed with where the election's going. I think you're going to see hundreds of thousands of people vote for Democrats, good quality Democrats, up and down the ballot this cycle, because the Democrats who have not been all that inspired and have sat out the last few elections are recognizing the dire situation we have in our country and in our state right now. You will see a surge in Democratic voters. In the center, we always have 10, 15, 20 points of people who aren't really sure where they're going to go. And I think they have given up hope that what the Republican Party is today in Texas is going to act in their interests. And I think you're going to see a lot of Republicans who feel like their party has left town and that their best choice is to vote for what they view as an independent-minded Democrat who's interested in good government in order to support a good candidate and send a message to their party. You need to come back to the table and govern responsibly, or we're not with you anymore.
State Senator and Democratic candidate for Texas Attorney General Nathan Johnson, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack.
We appreciate it.